woke up to the news that their school is closing.
I didn't come here to be the bearer of this news.
I guess the $350,000 the school raised just last week didn't do the trick. Oh, and what's this I hear? The governor announcing a historic deal between timber workers and environmentalists.
And that's exactly what's happening here.
Is cap and trade 2.0 solved? Ha! If it were only that easy. Oh, and hey, before you go all narc on our friend from Houston with the killer caddy and the fresh rims,
they don't know what's going on.
Let's look at what the law actually says, yeah? Here's the story. Well, okay, I'm here, you're here, shall we? I'm Dan Haggerty. Welcome to The Story. This is the newscast where you can become part of the story if you'd like. Just pull out your phone, pick it up, follow us at The Story KGW. Use the hashtag HeyDan anytime during the show. We got people out in the newsroom. They're like waiting for you to comment. Trust me. Write something in. We will read it. Tell us what you love, what you hate. I'm kind of an easy target. Have fun with that. We are listening, and we want to get your questions answered. So let's have a conversation tonight. We want to start with this one. This morning, we got a little bit of a heads up from the governor's office that she was announcing this historic, unprecedented agreement between timber and environmental groups. And we thought, whoa, wait a minute, cap and trade 2.0, has it been solved? Are we avoiding a Republican walkout? No, not at all, not even close. In fact, I'm embarrassed that I thought that. It's actually about forest management. The goal is to update timber practices in Oregon to both protect wildlife and the timber industry. They're also trying to get a bill passed on aerial pesticide spraying, and it gives people a heads up when that's going to happen. So it's not a cap and trade agreement, but it does kind of sound like she's trying to at least throw a bone to timber groups, or twig rather. Here's what the governor had to say when we asked her about that.
Would this have any effect on cap and trade as far as pushing that legislation?
No. I think it's fair to say that we obviously need a quorum to pass this legislation.
All right, so I'll translate. Basically, she's saying it's up to Republicans to show up. The cap and trade bill is right now still in committee, and we're waiting to see if it gets passed out and then head to the Senate floor. If you remember last year, that's exactly what triggered the Republican walkout, because they believed at that point Democrats had enough votes to pass it. So we're going to keep you posted on this one. Now let's move to our big story tonight. A local university will shut down, close its doors, be no more in just a few months. This was shocking news to the more than 5,000 students at Concordia University, Portland, who learned that this will be their last semester of college at Concordia, whether they were ready to graduate or not. The school's interim president, you see him there, that's Tom Reese. He came to Portland from Concordia's Minnesota campus, hoping to turn things around here. Apparently, he had some success doing that in Minnesota, and he thought that he might be able to do that here too. Sadly, it just wasn't the case. But that does bring us to tonight's quote of the day from interim President Reese. Quote, "I didn't come here to be the bearer of this news," he said. But he did tell our Pat Doris why he did come to Portland, and was to try to do this.
I had came here with the intent that we would find plans to turn the situation around. But to do that would have involved so much risk, it would have put the students in probably an even worse position than they are now. Trying to borrow more money when we really don't have anybody that's going to lend us any more money. Taking a shot at trying to increase enrollment when we have limited resources to do that. Those kinds of things are where you're really rolling the dice. And I think the board felt that the odds were better to not do that and create even a worse situation.
Now, Pat did a pretty lengthy interview, and I will say Reese sounded genuinely heartbroken about the situation. But there was one thing about all of this that wasn't quite sitting right with me or many of my colleagues in the newsroom, and it's this. Last Tuesday, on February 4th, Concordia University held its annual fundraiser at the new Hyatt, the one they just built in the Lloyd Center. We've done a bunch of stories on that. A bunch of students were there. There were donors who were there. President Reese was there. Mayor Wheeler was there. Even the rapper Common was there to deliver the keynote. They raised a bunch of money, $355,000 last Tuesday. $355,000. Less than a week later, we hear this decision that they are going to close. I guess the $355K didn't go as far as they hoped it would. But if you're wondering what's going to happen with that money, are the donors going to get it back? They can. Not that they will, but they can if they ask. Students can also ask the university for help finding a new university by the end of April. So, Concordia University is closing, and with it 115 years of Portland history. So, how did we get here? Concordia opened way back in 1905. Teddy Roosevelt was president, and a guy named Harry Lane was the mayor of Portland. It started as a 4-year academy for the Northwest's growing Lutheran community. It taught pastors and parochial school teachers. The school was accredited in 1962, and then women were finally allowed in 1968. In 1977, the Lutheran Church allowed Concordia to become a 4-year college, and from there, the university just kept growing, hitting 1,000 enrolled students by 1992. By 2014, it joined the NCAA Division II, and by 2017, Concordia partnered with Fabian School and launched a program for kids starting in pre-K. Just last week, Concordia held its annual fundraiser, and that brings us to today, when it shut down despite raising more than $350,000. And that's how we got here. All right, let's take a second now and circle back to politics for just a minute. The Democratic frontrunner for Oregon Secretary of State just made this huge announcement today. She's out. She doesn't want to run anymore. It's over. Now, if you don't know, this is the second most powerful position in Oregon. The reason? The Willamette Week story that just dropped about an hour ago. And in this story, it goes into detail about Jennifer Williamson's campaign spending while she was in the legislature. The article says that she spent nearly $50,000 of campaign money to take overseas trips. It also says she paid both her husband's law firm and her niece to rent out space for her campaign. And it says she spent a ton of campaign money on food and drinks during the legislative session. $10,000 in just 6 months last year. The average person is looking at that and saying, wow, that sounds illegal. But we will say, and the article notes, and this is important, none of this spending is illegal under Oregon's campaign laws. But it is a lot more than other Oregon lawmakers spend. Williamson denying any wrongdoing, saying that this is a baseless story to unfairly attack her. Still, she says she doesn't want to put her family through this or let this become a distraction, so she's suspending her campaign. We saw some pretty tense moments during the Mack stabbing trial today. Jeremy Christian's defense, they're in the driver's seat now, saying kind of what they think happened on the train. This guy was one of their first witnesses. That is Stephen Yerger. He's a self-defense expert from Idaho. Now, part of his testimony turned the tables a bit on who the aggressor on the train really was, in his opinion. In fact, Yerger said, quote, what Mr. Fletcher did was very inflammatory and was basically pouring gasoline on the fire. He's referring to Micah Fletcher, the lone survivor of the stabbing. That line prompted this challenge from the prosecutors.
Mr. Christian's the fire in that analogy, is that right?
He was pretty agitated.
So Mr. Christian's the fire in that analogy, is that right?
No.
No. So when you use the analogy throwing gasoline on a fire, and you use it to say that someone like Micah Fletcher would be throwing gasoline on a fire in his actions, who's the fire? Where's the fire? What's the fire in that analogy? Do you understand what I mean by analogy?
Yeah, I do understand your analogy.
So what's the fire?
So when you approach somebody that's agitated in the manner that Mr. Fletcher did, I guess you could refer that to as potentially the fire.
I get an idea of the tone in there today. Again, this is just day one for the defense, and this could be one that wraps up pretty quickly. They think the defense could wrap it in the next couple of days and turn this all over to the jury by next week. Here's Maggie Vespa with what we could see then.
This wasn't some wild killing street.
During opening statements, defense lawyers promised testimony on Christian's mental health, more specifically on autism spectrum disorder, which they say he has, and on the impacts of extreme stress and trauma on the human brain. We've brought a team of legal analysts on board to help us cover this trial. Longtime defense attorney Lisa Ludwig noted the defense needs to prove more than a diagnosis here.
The fact that someone's mentally ill and the fact that they're charged with a crime, are separate topics until someone can kind of knit them together in a cause and effect narrative. The state is still going to argue that he was acting planfully and intentionally. It's true that very mentally ill people can also act planfully and intentionally.
Christian has pleaded not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect to all charges, including 2 counts of first-degree murder. That means he has admitted to boarding a crowded Max train in May of 2017, delivering an angry, racist rant that terrified 2 black teen girls.
Saying go back to Saudi Arabia.
And then stabbing 3 men who either intervened or stood nearby. 2, Ricky Best and Talisha Nomkai Meche, died. The third Micah Fletcher, survived. Christian's lawyers argue their client has a diminished mental capacity and couldn't have fully known what he was doing.
Everybody was kind of running off the train. And
much of the prosecution's case centered on witnesses who saw the stabbings or the aftermath.
Put my hand against my throat to adhere as much pressure as I could to the wound.
Case in point, last week, Micah Fletcher testified about an emotional phone call with his mom moments after Christian stabbed him in the neck. Not wanting to panic her, he lied and said he'd been stabbed in the arm.
And she's like, yeah, okay, where are you? And I explained to her that I'm at the Hollywood Transit Center. And then I told her I loved her.
Now that the defense is in the driver's seat, Ludwig pointed out it's likely not in their best interest to relive those emotional moments. But she predicted we'll see witnesses who have already testified for the prosecution take the stand again. Here's why.
If the state calls a witness, they testify about A, B, and C, the defense can cross them about A, B, and C. But they can't necessarily get into X, Y, and Z. And so the defense can reserve the right to call that person again during the defense case to get into X, Y, and Z.
And that prediction has already come true. This afternoon, Demetria Hester took the stand for a few minutes. She had already testified about her encounter with Christian the night before the stabbings, and we've covered that extensively. It's when she says he threatened her and then he hit her in the face with a full Gatorade bottle. But defense lawyers didn't want to get into that again because she'd already testified to it. They asked her questions about like press conferences and sort of public speeches she had made about it. It was brief, it was specific, and that was it. She was gone again.
You know, the thing is, the city of Portland has been living this for 3 years now. And now we're finally getting to that point where we see the kind of the light at the end of the tunnel. The defense is doing their part now. What's the next week or 2 weeks look like as this thing comes to a close?
Right. So the defense basically told the judge last week specifically, and we've told there have been no updates, that they could wrap up their portion of this, calling all of their witnesses by the end of this week, meaning we could go into closing arguments by Tuesday because Monday is President's Day. So it would be Tuesday, sort of at the soonest. That's always flexible. That's always fluid. But once that happens, of course, this goes to the jury, and then it's up to them.
You got it. Maggie Vespa, thank you. If you still have questions, there's so much. As I mentioned, it's been 3 years of coverage of going through this saga together here in Portland. So reach out to Maggie with your questions. Reach out to us here at the store using hashtag HeyDan. We'll see you back here very soon after the break. When is a disaster enough of a disaster for FEMA to say, this is a disaster? We're asking for Eastern Oregon. And we know you might like the warmer weather, but you know who doesn't? All the bumblebees that are dying. And man, don't you hate when the Oscars get political?
We have a firm belief that representation matters deeply.
Because we wanted to see more representation in animation. We wanted to normalize black hair.
So annoying when the story continues. Hey, welcome back. We see a lot of you weighing in on all of our coverage tonight using the hashtag HeyDan. Keep it up. If you're watching our live stream, you probably have your phone in your hand right now. So just use it. Let me know. Ask a question. Do whatever. We want to hear from you. Follow us at The Story KGW. So the floodwaters now are receding in Eastern Oregon, which is good, but we're getting a look at what's left behind. And we've seen this before, all that mud and water and damage everywhere. Parts of I-84, as you can see there, were all torn up. People trying to salvage anything in their homes and businesses. Now, I bet some of you in these flooded out areas are probably wondering, is FEMA going to come in and help out at all? We had the same question, and as you can imagine, it is a bit of a process to get disaster assistance from someone like FEMA. And the process starts with paperwork. I know that's not what you want to hear if you've been washed out. You have so much else to do, but there's a form that Umatilla County wants you to fill out. You can report damage, how bad it is, do you have insurance, that kind of stuff. We got a link for you at kgw.com. Now, FEMA won't hand out money unless the president declares a disaster, and the president won't declare a disaster unless he has information like the stuff you give on those forms. Same goes for state money as well. So I know you're already dealing with a lot, but the forms are important. In the meantime, the county says you should reach out to your insurance provider for more immediate help with money.
Well, the story today is all about the sunshine we had from the coast to the Cascades to the Idaho border. There were low clouds, of course, this morning, but it was this. And look at the sunset. The sun has gone down already. This isn't Cannon Beach, but a beautiful, beautiful sky left as our sunset times are getting later and later. So with that in mind, look at this. Some metrics for you. Today, our sunset was at 5:30 for the first time all year. You want a little later, you don't have to wait too much longer. March 2nd, it'll be 6 o'clock, and then it really jumps by March 8th at 7:08. That, of course, is because daylight saving time begins on March 8th, so we get the hour later sunset because of that. So again, we crossed the threshold today with that 5:30 sunset. Nice to see. Here's the mountain. I tried to find some clouds, and you can see we had some low clouds. Oh, barely, but not much. That's all I could really find this afternoon in the way of cloud cover. And look at all that brilliant new snow on Mount Hood. And if you like new snow on Mount Hood, you're going to love our forecast because we get into more new snow as we go deeper into the week. We've got this weather system here that's going to be blowing on by and not really doing much for us tomorrow. But as we go into the end of the week, it will. Look at this. Here's our forecast for the ski areas. As we go, we'll stop this when the lifts open Saturday morning at 8 a.m. There's about 10 inches of new snow. We'll stop it again when the lifts open on Sunday morning. We go 25 inches of new snow, so that's a big day. Both Saturday and Sunday, about 10 to 15 inches of new snow. And it keeps going into Monday. By then, we've got 3 feet of new snow on Mount Hood. All of Oregon's mountains will be doing extremely well with snowpack for the end of the week and the weekend. We're clear tonight. We'll have fog again tomorrow morning. And if you're looking ahead towards Valentine's Day, because who isn't looking ahead towards Valentine's Day? Looks like your typically wet Valentine's Day in Portland, Dan.
I'll take the sunshine in the meantime, Matt. Thank you. So by now, you probably know that bees are in trouble, and that means that we're in trouble because bees pollinate a lot of our food. There is this new study out that says that the warming climate is to blame for the die-offs that we've seen. Kelly Chalmers talked to some experts about it for us.
These have beautiful yellow bell-shaped flowers.
Take a walk around Mark Gorman's Beaverton backyard.
We do have snowberry over there, that's a native plant.
And you'll find all sorts of plants that attract native bumblebees.
Bumblebees love this plant. For me personally, it's just a deep interest I have in bees.
Because he knows they are in trouble. And a newly published study found they might be in more trouble than researchers thought. The study found the number of areas in North America populated by bumblebees has dropped nearly 50% since the turn of last century. The reason? Extreme heat events.
This new study tells us that climate change is having a dramatic effect on bumblebee populations.
Conservation biologist Rich Hatfield was not involved in that particular study, but is part of a team studying bumblebee decline in the Pacific Northwest. He says in just the last few years, the western bumblebee, which used to be found in almost every backyard in our area, has all but disappeared.
It is pretty much absent from the Willamette Valley. We don't have any records in the most recent study west of the Cascades.
And while the spotlight is often on honeybees, bumblebees are critical when it comes to crops like tomatoes and blueberries, which depend on buzz pollination.
Where they actually latch onto some flowers and vibrate their wings at a particular frequency, which causes the pollen to literally come shooting out of the plant, which is something that honeybees and most other bees just can't do.
Hatfield says we can all help the bees by just doing like Mark does and planting native plants, even if it's just a few.
Every little bit helps, actually. So it's amazing how far that'll actually go.
All right, Keely's all about the environmental beat for us. Like every time she pitches a story, I'm trying to fight to have it in the story. I think it's good stuff. If you're passionate about that sort of thing, like helping bees, for instance, you can become what's called a bee community scientist. There are a lot of groups out there looking for help, and we've got some information for you on kgw.com. So better luck next year, Oregonians. A few local folks were up for Oscars last night, but by our count, all of them lost. So that is a bummer. We're going to give a shout out to them anyway, though, because they're on the home team. First, Hillsborough-based Leica Studios' Missing Link lost the animated feature category. Leica's been chasing an Oscar for a few years now, but haven't gotten one yet. They did get a Golden Globe this year, though. Maybe next year for the Oscar, Leica. Keep up the good work, and it is very good. And U of O tweeted that Dennis Gassner of the class of '71 son had a hand in the production design of 1917. That is awesome. That movie is awesome. What isn't awesome is Dennis didn't win. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood did. But Dennis is doing all right. Don't feel too bad for him. He got an Oscar in 1991 for the movie Bugsy. Way to go to Dennis. And we do regret to inform you that last night, for the 92nd year in a row, the Oscars got political. But I think you'll be okay with this soapbox. A film called Hair Love won the Oscar for Best Animated Short Film. It's about a little girl and her dad's struggle to get her natural hair under control. The filmmakers used their time on stage to push for anti-hair discrimination bills like the ones we're seeing in Salem and Olympia.
There's a very important issue that's out there. It's the Crown Act. And if we can help to get this passed in all 50 states, it will help stories like DeAndre Arnold, who's our special guest tonight, stop to happen.
All right, you heard the name there. They brought a kid along with them, DeAndre Arnold, to the ceremony. He's that Texas teenager who was asked to cut his dreadlocks or else he wouldn't be able to walk at graduation. So instead, Arnold walked the red carpet. How about that? The Crown Act that they talked about stands for creating a respectful and open world for natural hair. Basically, it would make discriminating against hairstyle illegal. The bill has been introduced in Oregon and Washington. We've talked about it here on The Story. And if you're wondering why it's important, a woman who testified about it in Olympia explained why.
As a black woman, this is I understand that when people say it needs to be more professional, that means it needs to be more white.
The Crown Act has been introduced now in more than 20 states. We'll let you know if either of these bills passes in Oregon or Washington. And if you have any legislature-related questions about the Hair Act or anything, pick up your phone, follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, on anything. Use hashtag HeyDan. Last week, he was keeping Portland weird.
We could post up with the J's, 6 rings, you did.
This week, a lot of you want to know if he's breaking the law. We've got an answer for all you narcs out there when the story continues. A lot of you are watching The Story the way you're supposed to watch The Story, with your phone in your hand, reaching out and saying hello to us using the hashtag HeyDan. We love to hear from you, but it always does surprise me, I would say, when certain stories seem to hit a nerve that I wasn't expecting. Like a feature that we did about a week ago on a guy who goes by the name Texas. Texas whips around in a custom caddy with some sick rims, also known as swangers, in his hometown of Houston. And last week he polished them up and he pulled on through KGW to say hello. Texas got a pretty warm reception from everybody online, except for a few people. A viewer named Debbie commented on my Facebook and wanted to know, are those even legal? They look dangerous to other vehicles. Not my cup of tea. Thanks for writing in, Debbie. And to set your mind at ease, we checked out the information on Oregon.gov. And while they didn't have a separate swangers section, it did specify that cars can be up to 8.5 feet wide in Oregon. The caddy that Texas drives is about 6 feet wide, which would give him more than a foot of swanger space on each side. Keep those questions coming. Use the hashtag HeyDan, and we'll do our best to get you an answer. Here's something that I think is worth your time. Laurel Porter brought us a love story of a Wilsonville couple last year, and this weekend they celebrated their 50th anniversary. Steve Goodwin spent years writing songs for his wife Joni and their daughters, but when he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, he forgot how to play them. So that's when a family friend came into the picture who happened to be a professional pianist with perfect pitch. She worked with Steve to learn all of his songs so that his family could hear them again. Like we said, it was just their anniversary. Not to mention, it is Valentine's Day this weekend. So it's a great reason to watch the story again or to check it out for the first time. It's up right now on the KGW YouTube page and KGW.com. Remember, grab your phone, use the hashtag HeyDan to talk with us, because we talk back. I'm going to read some of your comments when we return. We're also going to show you an example of a bioswale going above and beyond the Call of Duty when the story continues. All right, keeping Portland weird today is whoever decided this bioswale is a good parking space. I'm also learning what a bioswale is, and now you can know as well. We're all in this together. Hey, man, I get it. Foster at 205. Tough to find a parking spot there. Thanks for user JLHW on Reddit for letting us use this picture. If you're keeping Portland weird, we want to know about it. Find us at The Story KGW or email thestory@kgw.com. We got some comments coming in, a lot of them about Concordia. I'm grateful that my son will graduate this April. I hope another university purchases the campus. It's too beautiful to be turned into apartments and condos. Yeah, that would be sad. And a very sad day for the alumni of CU Portland. People pick their schools for a variety of reasons. I choose Concordia for its small class sizes and caring, engaging faculty. It's a very, very sad day for a lot of people who love that school, and some people are worried. Jessica writing in, I'm a nursing student at Concordia University, Portland. How are they planning to place 300 current nursing students in other programs? Can't answer that right now, but we're going to work on it for you. We'll let you know. And also, Matt writing in, does KGW make some revenue on the YouTube and website and social ads? You guys are pushing those a lot. That's a good question. I deserve some kickback, don't you think, Matt? All right, let's send things over to Laurel Porter at 6:30. That's the end of the story.